Hi there, this is Catherine with Unfolded Heart Music. Welcome back to Lyre Foundations. Today we're going to be continuing part 2, chapter 4, and we'll be looking at lesson 4, where we're going to be looking at a couple of different kinds of rhythmic variations, saying things that are a little bit less common, a little bit more nuanced, and also looking at the way that those notations look so that you understand what is actually being depicted in that sheet music. There's a couple of different ones that we're going to look at, but this is going to be a much shorter video than we've had recently, so hopefully that's a nice little bit of a break for you. And anyways, let's go ahead and jump in. I'll give a little summary, and then I'll illustrate each of the notations and what they sound like on the lyre. All right, we're going to be on page 65 and 66 for today. And there are 4 different notations that I'm going to be talking about. The first is grace notes. The second is what's called glissandos. The third are broken chords, which we talked about a little bit before. And then also playing in swing. So we'll break the video up into 4 different sections. Again, I'll illustrate what it sounds like and also be showing pictures and videos of the actual notation so that you know what goes together, what it looks like and what it sounds like. We'll pair those together, and then that will be the end of the video. All right, so let's jump in first to grace notes. All right, let's look first at grace notes. We're looking at the top half of page 65, and you can see there's little arrows pointed down to the different kind of styles and ways of writing grace notes. Essentially, grace notes are just little ornamental notes. They add a little bit of variation. It's a nice way to change up a melody and to add something just kind of interesting. It's a little bit more of an advanced technique, but it's very fun. I use it all the time on the lyre. I enjoy it very much. And the 2 things that I really want to point out to you is first that you can have grace notes that are a little bit faster than other kinds of grace notes. So if we take a look at this example, for instance, we can see that the first and then the 4th and the 5th examples are using 8th notes as grace notes. And so you play these notes right before you play the larger note that these sort of tiny notes are next to. We can see in contrast in examples 2 and 3, we're using 16th notes. So it really just means we're going to play those grace notes a little bit faster. So let's just give an example. We have, let's just do this, this first measure. We've got, without the grace note, we just have C, then down to G, back up to C, and then D. Okay. The grace note is a B right before the C. So it would sound something like this. I'll just play the grace note plus the C. That's probably a little bit fast. Let's play it a little bit slower. So in context, it would sound something like this. One more time. Let's do it a little bit better. One more time just for good measure. So a couple important things to recognize about grace notes. Like I said, they come right before whatever note they're next to. They're going to be on the left-hand side usually of that note. And they shouldn't alter the tempo or the rhythmic steadiness of your piece. So for this first example, again, we had 4 quarter notes. All of those quarter notes should still land right on the beat. They are not changed by the addition of a little grace note there. So listen to this. 1, 2, 3, 4, compared to 1, 2, 3, 4. You hear how those big notes are still the same. That's really important. The grace notes are not meant to throw off the beat. They're just sort of something squeezed in there, which is why they're tiny notes, which is kind of fun. Okay, let's do a little bit of a comparison with the 16th notes. Now, this is not really a sort of a precise science as far as I understand, but let's look at measure 2. We'll have those grace notes a little bit faster than I just played the 8th note. Notice that there are 2 grace notes in this example. We could have several grace notes. You can't have too many, otherwise you're not going to be able to keep a steady tempo and a steady rhythm. But let's look at just the notes by themselves. So again, we have C, then we go down to B, farther down to G, and back up to B. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the grace notes that will play right before the B goes from B up to C, and then we have the big note, which is B. So it'll sound something like this. That's the grace note plus the main note. So let's play that whole measure. Let's do it without the grace note and then with grace note. 1, 2, 3, 4, with grace note. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I want to make sure to show you on the lyre sort of how I do that. I know my video is a little short, so I'm going to lift up my leg here. It really is just a quick it's just going over the strings a little bit faster than you're probably used to. And this really just takes practice, just like anything else. I tend to just naturally mute the string. So for example, if I'm doing this one, I tend to mute the, actually both of them eventually, the B and the C, because otherwise it gets too blurry. Now I'm going to naturally mute the B when I play the big note B, because I'm going to have to touch that string again. But the C, I also sort of naturally, intuitively mute because I don't want it to ring out for too long. Oops. When I do just a single grace note, I will almost always mute that first one. You see how my finger goes back to it? Now you don't have to do that, but I think it sounds a little bit blurry, and so I prefer to go ahead and mute that. Okay, so that's grace notes. Play with that. It really is a very playful ornamental addition to playing music. And so if you see these tiny little notes, you're just supposed to basically squeeze those in before that longer note. Again, if you have any questions about that, let me know. But that's grace notes. That's what they look like. You're going to be playing whatever note the note is on, whatever pitch, excuse me, the note is on. And make sure not to throw off your tempo and your rhythm. So that's it. We're going to switch now to glissandos. All right, looking at glissandos now. This is a different, again, these are all kind of little ornamental things. Well, maybe not all of them. These two for sure. Glissando, let's look at the image first. And of course, as always, go ahead and read what is actually described there. I'm not speaking as specifically or as thoroughly as I wrote it, just the nature of speaking. So go ahead and give that a good read. So what we're noticing here is we've got two notes, and in between those two notes, there's what looks like kind of stair steps. Now, sometimes it's a straight line, but most times I've seen it's like these little zigzag stair steps. And you'll see the word, the abbreviation rather, gliss, G-L-I-S-S dot, and that is short for glissando. And what that means is that you're going to start on one note in the first measure, and the first example. This is just a C. We'll use a C down here. And then we end on the C above it, the octave above. And what it means is that you want to play quickly all the notes in between. Okay, so it'll sound like this. One more time. Now, the speed at which you play the glissando really depends on how much time you're allotted in the music to get up to that note. So let's look at this in context. We've got a quarter note C, then B, then A, then our glissando, and we end with a C. So let me do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now if it was faster, I'd have to move faster. So if we were going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, then we'd have to move at that pace. So just like with the grace notes, you don't want to throw off your tempo or your rhythm. The same thing is true with the glissando. Now how you do that really depends on kind of your personal preference. I tend to use, I'm sorry, my video is not super great today. I'm struggling with that a little bit. I tend to use my thumb. So this is what I did. And just going along with that. You want to have both a consistent movement to your hand. You don't want to be, that sounds just not very clean, not very beautiful. I like to emphasize that top note, and you can go a little lighter than how you normally would stroke it. I think for going up, the thumb is easiest. For going down, something like the 2 or the 3 would be easiest. I tend to use glissandos going up rather than going down more often. I don't use this a whole lot, but it is something that's pretty common on harps and I don't know, mildly common on lyres. So I wanted to make sure that you knew if you saw that in music, or if you're writing your own music and you wanted to be able to illustrate that and know the notation for it, that you understood how to do it. So that's a glissando. It's sort of like gliding from one note to the other. Again, keeping a steady tempo and making sure that all the notes in the glissando itself is actually roughly evenly spaced. All right, we're going to close with that and move to broken chords next. All right, now we've talked about broken chords before when we were doing our chord exercise, but now you can see how it's actually written. And it, in a similar way as the glissandos, it also has a sort of squiggly line there. And but of course the difference is that it's not connecting two different notes. It is rather just on one chord, right? When you're playing these notes all at the same time, it runs vertical rather than at a diagonal line. And what this means is that instead of playing the chord all at once, you're going to play the chord one note at a time. Now, again, as I've said with the other two, you don't want to be throwing off your rhythm of your piece. So for example, if I were to be playing something like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and I made the last one a broken chord, we'd have something like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So I can only take up the 2 beats that I'm allotted in that note to get through all of those notes, which is not usually challenging. It's just important to know so that you can continue moving in the piece in the way that's appropriate. Now, a lot of times a broken chord is utilized when there's already a ritardando in the piece, so you're already slowing down with it. So we might have something like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and it actually helps emphasize that ritardando in the piece because it's almost like a slower version of a chord in a certain sense. But again, make sure that you're really timing it as it is appropriate to do so in the piece in that section. So you can go ahead and give these examples a try. They're not anything, I didn't write them to be particularly melodic or anything like that. It really is just to give you a little bit of practice of switching between a solid chord and a broken chord. And this is also something that's very fun to do. You can do on the lyre and in the lyre music, you can use both hands, your left and your right hand, or you can just use one or the other. It just depends on what you actually want to do. So that's what it looks like. That's what that little squiggly line means. And however long that note is, for example, if that squiggly line is in front of a whole note, you have a total of 4 beats to get through all the notes. You don't have to use all 4 beats. That would sound probably more like an arpeggio. More like you had 4 quarter notes. So you don't want it to sound like quarter notes or eighth notes. You want it to sound like a chord, just a little bit broken up rather than all at once. Okay, so that's broken chords. Now let's take a look at our last item, and that is swing time. All right, let's talk now about swing time. This is a little bit different than the other 3 topics because those are more, again, ornamental additions to music. Swing time is a style of playing. Usually you will know it's swing because it simply says the word swing at the beginning of the piece. It will not change the way in which the music is written, but it will change the way in which you play it, which is what sort of makes it a little bit tricky. So what I've tried to illustrate here is the way in which it's usually with eighth notes. So we're just going to talk about eighth notes. The way in which eighth notes are played. And so I've shown you what they look like, which is just normal eighth notes. So it'd be just, if we're looking at this first measure here, what's that? See? Yep. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's called straight. It means that you're breaking up that one beat into an even half. It's like if I were to split a cookie with you and I broke it right in half, gave you half, gave me half. Okay. Whereas with swing, it's like if you said, give me half the cookie, and I broke it not exactly in half, and I gave myself the bigger half and gave you the smaller half. You emphasize the first one more heavily than the other. I've described this in other pieces, in other walkthroughs, as sort of like a limping sound. It's sort of like a dragging. Okay. So rather than, let me play this straight, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, it would be like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So it's a heavier, it's like, I call it limping because when you limp, you don't put as much weight on one foot as the other. So you kind of go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it creates a kind of drag to it. It's very common in jazz music. And then actually a number of my pieces are actually in swing. It just sort of comes out that way. And so what I would do is go ahead and try just these first two measures where you have, you have the what's called straight, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then right after that try and change it to swing, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, and then try that on different notes. Maybe we're doing just a A minor. Let's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and change it to swing, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay. Really listen. If you can find, I'm sure you can find all sorts of YouTube videos that will give you examples of hearing swing. I think that's by far the best way to learn it, because it really is kind of a, for lack of better words, it's sort of a feel to the piece. And then again, it has that drag to it. So let me finish before I close this. I didn't exactly explain what this image is. So the eighth notes that look like normal eighth notes is what it will look like. Okay. But how you will play it is as if you had a triplet in each of those beats, and you gave you sort of combined the first two beats of that triplet as one note, and then you had your third note. And so that the second and the fourth measure are showing the way in which you would actually play it, even though it will never be written in that way. It will not show triplets or anything like that. It will always look like eighth notes, but it will have that word at the beginning, swing, and that's how you know to have that swing. Okay. I think that's it. I might put in the comments or in the description some of the songs that I've written that use swing, so you can use that as examples as well. I think that'd be very helpfoll. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I don't want to name them wrong, so I'm going to double check that and then I'll take a look at it. But this is it. These are the four little things I wanted to go over. Let's pause for a second. Give yourself some time to practice that, and then I'll just say a note or two about the practice that I've talked about here, and then we'll go ahead and close it up with that same section. Okay, so in addition to doing the little exercises or following the examples that I've given for each one of these four, one thing that would be really helpful with really, I mean, a lot of this stuff, but especially this particular lesson, is to just listen to examples. Listen to it in isolation, and then listen to it in the context of a piece, and understand, what, for example, a grace note sounds like, or what a broken chord sounds like, or glissando, etc. it will, when you listen to it in context, it will also help you understand and develop just an intuitive sense of the ways in which these ornamental or stylistic ways of playing are naturally integrated into music. And it will help you to be a better player, and if you're writing or composing for the lyre, to help you be able to do that with a way that is just natural and musical as well. So that's absolutely my biggest recommendation, is to listen, and of course then try it on your lyre. Again, I will go ahead and put in the description just a handful of songs that I have, because maybe you have that sheet music that I've written that utilize swing in particular. Almost all of the songs at the very end will use a broken chord. I'll be careful about me saying that because I'm gonna look and there's not that many, but I do have a few, and then also some eighth notes. So if you've got some of my music, not eighth notes, grace notes, if you've got some of my music, then one of the reasons I pulled these particular 4 topics out is because I use them, and so I want you to know what they are and how they look and what those symbols mean, and then how to play them on the lyre. So take a look at that. If you've got any questions about any of this, as always, you're welcome to send me an email or put a comment if you think it's a question that might be helpful for others. And I hope that you enjoy this, have fun with this, try it out on your lyre, and it will add just a little bit more interest to whatever it is that you're playing, which is always kind of fun and interesting to experiment with. So thank you so much. I hope this series continues to be helpful for you, and God bless you. May the peace of Christ be with you. Thank you again.